Hi, I am Allie Camaletti, and you are listening to Snack Leadership. I will be talking about everything leadership, broken down into bite-sized pieces. You will hear what different leadership skills look like in organizations and how they can rise teams up or take them down. I help leaders build resilience and improve performance by bringing awareness to opportunity behaviors in my business. Spark your mindset. I provide leadership and sales coaching, as well as team building and guest speaking. My hope is for you to feel inspiration and to create a spark in your mindset. Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about business ethics. Business ethics are the moral principles, policies, and values that govern the way companies and individuals engage in business activity. Christian Muntean is an advisor to owners, executives, and boards. As the founder of Vantage Consulting, Christian has empowered owners and executives of small and medium-sized businesses to boost their top-line revenues by over $500 million. Even more valuable, they've achieved this while expanding their bottom-line margins and reclaiming precious time for their loved ones and passions. He is also an author whose most recent book, Train to Lead, is a tested and proven 90-day leadership development guide built on athletic training principles. Thank you, Christian, so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Allie. It's good to be here.
I'm really enjoying your book.
Well, thank you.
I like the way you've walked through how to change behavioral patterns.
Uh-huh.
So feel free to interject that at any point today when we're talking about something and you feel like it's appropriate.
Sure.
So let's talk about something that you have recently learned about yourself.
Yeah. Um, so very recent. I recently had a shoulder surgery from just healthy living, working out too hard, playing too hard for too many years. And I think the recent discovery for myself is you had mentioned habits. You'd mentioned that I had mentioned habits. Through the recovery of the surgery, it's been about 5 weeks. I had stopped doing a lot of the things like working out because I kind of couldn't, or it was harder, going to a sauna regularly, a few other things that I had built into my life that helped me manage my energy and stress and overall health. And I just started noticing, without initially understanding it, how negatively I was feeling over a period of time. And then as I was getting clear to start working out again, it was like immediate boosts of energy, immediate boosts of a better sense of well-being. And I thought, wow, I had kind of forgotten why I had put those habits into my life. And so that just it was a rediscovery of good habits I had built for understandable reasons, had walked away from, and then rediscovered like, oh, I need to have these in my life because it helps me function. So that's what comes to mind.
Interesting. So while you were recovering, you were doing a different type of self-care that maybe wasn't as focused in
No,
areas that
I
really did make a difference to
I
help
just
you?
I just stopped. I mean, really, I just
Oh, you
stopped.
stopped it all.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I stopped. I had the surgery, then we hit. It was right around holiday, right before Christmas. So we hit
Mm.
all the holidays, so schedules are off, and so I kind of just went on coast, for a while, and that's was not the best strategy. So another learning around that is when I see disruptions to schedule and helpful patterns coming, is to probably try to think through an alternative plan for how to manage some of that when I can't do what I would normally do.
I bet you a lot of people will be able to relate to this. I have heard this before,
Oh yeah.
and I can I can imagine that. I don't know what I would do without my morning walks, like
Yeah.
sunrise walks first thing in the morning, and what that
Yeah.
does for me mentally. That would be really hard for me if anything happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, don't move to Alaska in the winter, but
Yeah, we have a little snow and ice, but
yeah.
probably not as much as there.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
So let's talk about what made you first embody this leadership skill of
Hmm.
business ethics?
Yeah. I Well, my interest in leadership really started in working in international disaster relief. And so decades ago, I was working in conflict zones and disaster zones. And I saw that I believed that the work that we were doing was important, but I saw that we could be working in relatively secure areas in very, very well funded projects. And it was very, very hard to be effective if were poorly led or the team didn't get along well. And on the other hand, we could be in literally in a war or intense conflict zone with hardly any resources to work with. And we could accomplish a lot if we were led well and our team got along well. And so really for me, that felt like an ethical issue, like leadership on its own, how you lead, how you work with people, because it has such a significant impact. I felt like I really want to learn how to lead well and how to lead effectively and understand the dynamics behind it, because it was very clear to me that leadership was the common denominator between successful projects, and poor leadership was the issue behind unsuccessful projects over and over and over again. And I just felt like the work we're doing is too important. It impacts people's lives. It's important to learn to be intentional about how to lead well. And then as I started working later in the more corporate world, same thing. You're impacting, you know, maybe fives or tens or hundreds or thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and how people are impacted by where they spend a lot of their time and their best energy comes down to how people lead. And so to me, leadership is an ethical, how you lead is an ethical question.
I agree. And so when you have been able to witness really, really thriving companies that are
Hmm.
well at this,
Yeah.
which doing consulting, not always do you walk into companies that are doing it amazingly, right?
Right.
Because often
Right.
they bring you in because they're not.
Right.
What did that look like for you?
What does thriving look like to me? I think
Yeah.
thriving often looks like a couple of different things. The companies that I see that do the best usually do have a thriving financial life. Usually their bottom line is doing well. I mean, that's just part of it, and it can't be minimized. And some people are awkward, or even in business, some people get awkward around that. But also, and this is something I look for actually when I choose clients, is do they take care of people? Do they care about people? And if leaders communicate things to me and I just hear the language that they use, that they care about their team, they care about their customers, they care about their vendors, and they feel a sense of responsibility to them, oftentimes that's also indicative of a company that, if it's not yet thriving, it has the ingredients to thrive as long as they're willing to do certain other things. And so, in companies that are really doing well sustainably, I see that there is a very healthy culture where leaders do care. And I think another piece to that is, or I guess is something I want to, maybe a nuance I want to address in that, is caring. Some people think caring is just about being nice. And I think it's important to know that caring includes healthy accountability as well. And I don't think I've ever seen a truly thriving company where there isn't a healthy accountability. That means people are asked to report on and stay in alignment with expectations and values and so on a regular basis, and that leaders actually enforce that and they make that in a way that's respectful and caring towards others, but still, it's still there. And that creates a broad environment that people can thrive within.
I kind of want to go back to the example you brought up about the finances not really
Yeah.
thriving. So let's say they love their people, they're doing all the things, they're doing their best to hold them accountable, yet their finances are not thriving. What would you recommend?
Well, I think you'd have to do some kind of analysis to understand what's going on. If they're in a dying market, if they're in the wrong market. Um, the But I don't believe that I think first of all, you have to have the mindset that doing well in business is a part of doing well for people. I mean, if you have that basic understanding that if I meet a valid need, then I will receive a valid compensation for that. And so if that's not happening, there has to be a question around, are you actually addressing an actual need or desire that's in the community? Are you addressing it in a way that's effective? Are you pricing in the right way? So I meet companies that they've kept the same prices literally for 20 years, and they're trying to understand why their margins aren't great. And and so some of it's just having a real conversation around those things. And but I think good business does result, and a lot of my background, was even in the nonprofit sector. Good business and healthy nonprofits, they all do well financially. Otherwise, you can't take care of your employees.
Yeah.
And so if you're having to lay people off, if you're underpaying people, if you can't give people at least a reasonable, benefits or so on for companies that are a little bit larger, I think all things need to work together well, for even some of the pieces to work together well. You can have a lot of desire to care for your employees, but if you don't run an effective company at the same time, your employees and your customers will be underserved.
So true. It's very true. And so the example of there's a leader that he thinks he's doing all the right things, and then he hears something that you might say that he's like, oh, wow, you know what? I'm missing the mark on this. Where would you have him start first?
Could you frame that with a little bit more of a specific scenario?
Mm-hmm. So let's say that they have values, they have the
Hmm.
mission statement,
Right.
but then as they start digging into some of the values, they start to see that they're not living them in a certain way.
Right.
Like, I think one example could be sustainability.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about it, but then there can be um, a lot of costs in trying to go more sustainable in companies.
Right. Right.
And that he's like, wow, it's important to me personally, and I want it to be important to my business.
Yeah.
But how do I make this jump?
Yeah. And so your question is what do you do when you notice there's a dissonance between your actual actions and something you've stated as a value?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when I see that, and that's common, it's very, very common. And so, what I recommend to these leaders is that they evaluate, is this truly a value? Because part of my um, assumption is that human beings do naturally act in ways that are in alignment with what they truly value. We don't tend to act for long in dissonance with ourselves. Now, what we've said we value and what we truly value may be different. And so I would first ask, like, if you're not actually acting in ways that lead to, and I assume you mean environmental sustainability in terms of financial
Yeah.
sustainability. So if you're not actually acting in ways that are in alignment with environmental sustainability, then I would question, is this truly a value? Maybe it is. Maybe the challenge is we don't know how to act in ways that are environmentally sustainable that also allow us to have a healthy business. And so
Yeah.
maybe and what this often happens is people kind of fall in love with particular fad methodologies that sound good or look good to some people, but don't actually work. And so we want to evaluate, okay, what does environmental sustainability in your business, in your context, really look like? And if it's not producing the results that you're looking for, maybe we just need to go back and look at the methodology and give up some of these, sacred cow type methodologies and come down to something that actually produces the results you're looking for. So I guess the first two things is this actually a value, and challenging that or questioning that. And then second, if it is, let's reevaluate the methodologies that you're using, and not conflate the methodology with the outcome, which often happens.
So good. Exactly. All right. So, as we wrap things up, who is someone that has significantly impacted your life and who you think of when you think of like business ethics?
Business ethics. I think someone that a mentor of mine is a Dr. Brian Green, and he was someone who mentored me in leadership as I was coming up. And he founded a medical and counseling clinic, which ended up having a lot of influence. He was very interested in a holistic approach to health and being able to meet kind of broadly the needs of people. And he was a model to me of someone who designed the entire clinic with the intent, and it was hit or miss and whether or not they always nailed it. But the intent was that this should be a healing place to work at, not just a place to come and receive healing. And he was aware that many healing places are actually very toxic and dysfunctional inside, and which is pretty common actually. And so he really wanted this to be a place where everybody that came in contact with it was nurtured and grown and came in contact with health in some way. And he tried to live that out himself, at least in my experience with him. And so he was a model for me of someone who, in decisions around finances and how he related to people, even when we disagreed on things, he was a model to me of someone who tried to stay true to taking care of people and valuing people.
I love that. How about a quote that you feel really embodies what we're talking about today?
The quote, and I'm not going to be able to quote it precisely because I just don't have a good memory for rote content. But the quote that guides me a lot comes from Robert Greenleaf, who coined the term servant leadership. And he uses this quote that essentially leaders should be judged by or evaluate their success by how we impact the people around us. Do they grow? Do they become more autonomous? Are they able to make decisions themselves? Are they able to serve others more effectively? And what's our impact on the people who have the least amount of power or who are the most vulnerable in our spheres of influence? And are they at least not being hurt by what we do? And so that sentiment or that quote impacts a lot of my thought and my perspective around leadership. Is it doesn't matter what I say I do. It doesn't even really matter what a financial statement says. How are the people closest to me, my family, the people directly in my office? And this is how I evaluate leaders that I work with, in part, is regardless of what they say or what they're known for, the people that are closest to them, what do those relationships look like? Because that tells me a lot about that individual.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, so what's your favorite snack?
I like chocolate. That's probably my favorite snack. And I like lots of different kinds of chocolate. That's probably not super novel, but I like exploring all the different ways people make chocolate.
I love it. Christian, thank you so much for your time today. Just really good information and ways of thinking about things. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was nice to be here. It's a good conversation.
Thank you for tuning in to Snack Leadership. I hope you felt inspiration, motivation, and felt your mindset spark. Snack Leadership is recorded and produced by myself, Ali Camilletti, and music by Shireen Amini.